These are the Lewis Chessmen, the oldest chess pieces in recorded history. And in this video, I'm going to share with you the remarkable story of how these pieces were discovered. And I will also analyze the oldest chess game that we know of. Isn't it beautiful? I should mention that this board is, of course, a replica, since the original is a historical artifact. And I would like to thank Brilliant for sponsoring the chessboard. Brilliant is a wonderful learning site where you can learn just about anything in a beautiful, intuitive, and visually pleasing way. So go to brilliant.org/ASMRchess to get a free 30-day trial. And if you decide to go premium, you will get a 20% discount on that as well using brilliant.org/ASMRchess. Thank you very much. Let's wind the clocks back about 200 years to 1831. And let's travel to the Isle of Lewis in Scotland. And let's meet a young Scottish man, Malcolm Sprott MacLeod, who one beautiful summer day was walking along the beach of the Uig Bay in the Isle of Lewis. And when he passed a sandbank there, he happened upon a small crevice in the sand. Upon investigation, he discovered a small kist buried in the sand. A kist is a coffin or box made of stone. Inside this kist was a great treasure. 78 beautifully carved chess pieces. Local legend says that it was actually a cow that led him there, but that cannot be confirmed. Scholars of history has investigated these pieces, trying to find out where they come from, and we have made a lot of progress. We know that they are carved from walrus tusk, very likely in Norway, very likely about 800 years ago. What we don't know is why they were buried there or where they came from. If you look at these pieces, the rook, or rather the warden, which they would have called him back then, if you look how he's biting his shield, he has a very expressive look in his eyes. You can see individual hairs carved out. That would require a master craftsman even today, but 800 years ago, from walrus tusk, which was also a precious material. These must have been incredibly valuable. And there were enough for several chess sets. Were they supposed to be sold? Were they traveling with a merchant on sea who wanted maybe to sell them in different ports over Europe or Great Britain maybe? Maybe they were attacked by pirates who stole their treasure and buried it there, and maybe they got caught later and couldn't come back and take their treasure. Or others have speculated that these were owned by the Lord and Lady of the Isle of Lewis, and maybe the isle was raided by bandits, pirates, and they went and buried their treasure and were never able to recover it. We don't know. We don't know. Maybe one day we will know, though. 800 years ago, they played chess with pieces that looked exactly like this. And they played according to the same rules that we do, with minor exceptions in the case of, for instance, pawn promotion. Back then you couldn't make more than one queen, as that was seen as an affront or as disrespectful to the royalty. Very small, but other than that, they played with the same rules that we do. And do you know how they taught those rules 800 years ago, 900 years ago? Because we have the rules written in a poem 900 years ago, before even these pieces were made. The rules of chess. And of course they wrote them down in a beautiful, beautiful poem. The poem is very, very interesting in many ways. For instance, it says that you are not supposed to call this a horse. It is a knight, which is a mistake that probably millions of people still make to this day. I am not so pedantic about it. If you want to call it a horsey, I think you should call it a horsey. But the author of this poem almost 1,000 years ago was very annoyed by that. And also the poem explains that the white pieces here, back then they were not white, they were red, and the black pieces were not black, they were green. I will just read the first part of the poem, and maybe I will make a more in-depth video about it later. It's called Versus die Sachis, the verses of chess. And it begins like this. If it is right and proper to put your cares aside and play games, here is one that will refresh your mind. If you want to learn how to play it, pay attention and put your heart into it. It will become your favorite among games that you like. There is no trickery involved or fraudulent oath, nor do you tear apart body or limb. You'll contract no debts, nor force anybody to pay theirs. No devious opponent will lie in wait for you. The ruin that may come from the throw of a dice is totally absent from the simplicity of this game. So I think that's absolutely beautiful, and the author hit upon a lot of the things that I also think is beautiful about chess. There's no chance, there's no dice. You are the master of your own fate on the chessboard. And they also sing an ode to the simplicity of the game, because the rules are so simple, yet complexity on an unbelievable scale arises from these beautiful, simple rules. And I have always viewed chess as a microcosm of decisions, if you think about it. You sit down and you play chess, and you enter this simple black and white world with very simple rules, and you can write down your moves, so you can later look at every single decision you made in this small but complex universe in a way that is very hard to do with decisions out in the real world. But they can unearth, you can discover biases in your thinking, flaws in your thinking, areas you have to work on. Maybe you are very aggressive, but maybe you insist too much on your idea and often fail to play the defensive move required because you're so focused on the attack. Or maybe you are too timid being way too secure and not seizing the opportunity to strike when it is there, because maybe you are afraid in the chess game, and maybe that is something that we can take away from the chess game and look at in our own lives. Or we can look at the decisions made by people hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Now let's travel to Scachs d'amore, the game of love, a poem written in the 1400s. Scholars date it to about 1475. It is the oldest recorded chess game that we know of, and it is a very interesting piece of literature, let me tell you. It has 64 stanzas, which is the same number of squares that are on a chessboard, and it is a debate between two authors, Castelvi playing with the red side, or the white side as we would say today, in the role of Mars, the masculine god, against the other author, Vignoles, playing with the green pieces, or as we would say today, the black pieces. And Vignoles plays as Venus, the goddess, the feminine. And they are debating love as they play both in verse, in the poetry, and also with the moves. And every turn, Fenula, the third author, comes in and explains something about the rules of chess. So this is an educational 64 verse or 64 stanza long poem that will teach you about love and how to play chess as well. I will not read you all of it, but I will take out some of the beautiful parts as we go over this historical and beautiful game of chess, and while we maybe ponder love a little bit ourselves along the way. Red starts, and Castelvi starts the game in the following way by saying, "The field's assigned, and all the men are ready. The great warrior with his red standard decided to move as soon as required, taking love as the name of the battle. He moved towards the field of the beautiful, the most valiant pawn in conquest. He moved 2 spaces towards her, and by this move the king discovers reason and opens the road of will." So a lot is going on here. By this move, the king apparently discovered reason and opened the road of will. So these are big ideas they are already throwing in there for us to ponder. Let's see what their opponent, the feminine, has to say about this. "The gentle lady, not lacking in spirit, carrying the green banner of hope and shouting, 'Glory, glory covers my people with all blessing.' Her pawn, courteous, well-tempered, moves up because beauty opens, in the game of love, the first step. With a humble gesture for defense, her heart was pierced with the thrust of love." So we see pawn to e4 and pawn to d5, which would later be known as the Scandinavian defense. So this is also the oldest opening in chess. After these 2 moves, I will say what the third author has to say about the rules, just to show you how beautifully they would describe these things a long time ago. And Fenelon then comes in after these two moves and says, "The first rule you must abide by is in this game that a piece once touched, firmly admitting neither debate nor confront by any player true, must be played. It falls to reason, for a lover's thoughts, having been chosen, cannot freedom afford, or doubt, but take full submission, thus be saying, courage and folly, in every move, as once done, done it is." So you cannot take a move back, and there is the touch move rule that we know from chess tournaments today. Once you touch a piece, you must move that piece. That rule is from the 1400s. And I will never ever say again that you can't take back a move. I will say courage and folly in every move, as once done, done it is. Because I think that is amazing. Then we go to Mars again, Castelvi, saying, "Good service, received with courtesy, made a new effort to accept it, becoming lord of the spot where he took it, giving no thought whether she'd be annoyed, because the force that led him so to love her moved him to such glory of desire, ever following love until he found her. The enterprising one to get his way will not be stopped by turns or thrusts." And thus he captured the pawn to lure out the lady, because he is in the throes of love. He is so in love with the lady. And this is also theory. You are supposed in the Scandinavian defense to capture this pawn. But what will Venus, the goddess, have to say about this? "So as to let beauty's fame shine through, seeing that service delights in courtesy, with great rigor she left her house, to punish all those foolish fantasies, caring not a bit for silly niceties. Looking around as a crane scans the field, she kills the pawn, who strutted proud. One who takes action must look to learn, to not being hit by the aim he's taking, by the aims he's taken." So, when you expose yourself or your pawn because you are in love, well, you can be met with a swift judgment by the lady, as we can see. And again, this is theory. This is still being played by grandmasters today. This is a legit chess opening. Now the red side introduces a new concept, that of will. So throughout the game there's all these big ideas like will, desire, rationality, modesty, to be a beauty, all these big ideas that are discussed in this very lofty language. So now it is red to move, and we are talking about willpower. So the stanza reads, "Will, as it is desirous to please, as soon as it can to the chosen lady, strives toward her," and apparently this is will, strives toward her, "in order to get his great praise with most perfect tongue. It was a discreet person's mind, to think ever to serve and not displease one who has been made lady of his heart. It is a fool who dares give insult against one who is due a vassal's homage." So this is about being a gentleman, apparently, and not displease the lady of your heart, and give praise with most perfect tongue. And then you can read into that what you will. So as to keep the homage tower, the gracious lady returns to her place. For a knight, mostly one of noble breed, should not wish to stain an honest fame, so the one in love, when inflamed by passion, should not attempt to damage the goods of honor, and if he dared do so, as she flees, his plan is broken. For when it rains, if you seek shelter under leaves, believing yourself dry, you might get wet. That's what it says. Reason, finding sharper than a knife's edge, the lady whom he most humbly loved, being left quite sad from such deception, and seeing that praises and services she disdained for the value that appealed to her, his thought that conquers with sighs, to the 4th degree he sent a spy. This is the 4th degree. One whom would leap for his exaltation must first lower himself a bit. So you cannot get the lady. The lady went back. She was not satisfied. She was not satisfied with the praise, the compliments offered to her. So now it's time for Red to lower himself a bit. And now, with all this talk of praise being sung to the lady of his heart, and now with all this talk of the praises and the compliments, we start talking about honesty, which should accompany such things. The honesty of one who wants to attract great beauty, if it will be divine, transmit disdain quite consciously, to cut off the vein of thought. For if he declines from virtue and would never limit himself, he will be undone by forbidding honor. By its nature, fire is always burning, but water will make it dance back to measure. And that's the stanza accompanying Knight to F6. And at this point, this is about the gentleman, the masculine energy over here, being taught to love correctly and not, as they say, decline from virtue. One in love, realizing that pride and annoyance does not please the gentle lady, had to use reason to temper events, and reason was willing and a great ally. Her sweet speech that so seduces gave him, with no need of fearsome sword, to reach one whom the world adores. What great help, and at very little cost, the sweet sound is of composite praise. And this Knight to F3. So honest praise, and no need for a fearsome sword, metaphorical or otherwise, to go first in the battle. No, first he must show that he is capable of true love, and he must sing her praises with an honest heart, so that she can see that he is honest. A bitter treat, encased within sweet crust, is the adulator who flatters all senses, and flattering beauty approaches, the deceit hiding beneath the flattery. From his eyes to give her the pay of love, a sweet regard comes in place of an answer. Thus healing the wound of her disdain, the eyes can look at the invisible and torment the dispassionate spirit. So now she can see, with this move, bishop to g4, pinning the knight to the queen. Showing that her wound, the wound of her disdain, is being healed a little bit by the seeming honesty of Mars. Conformity is the most certain bet, as among lovers it feeds their friendship. Pawn to h3, trying to kick away the bishop. So now she says, as praise awakens the spirit and placates beauty with noble mien, with sweet regard, hitting right on the heart. She captures. Soon he took as pay and recompense the rays of the sun that penetrated the will. Stars are the eyes for mariners to navigate who in this sea are drowning. And then she responds, so that lovers may more clearly know the honesty carefully enacted by thought which lovers follow with courteous playfulness, put up a gate. By moving one pawn one step, the enemies may spread their squadrons, seeing for them all hope has died. Discretion courteously combs what desire foolishly musses. So there's opened up a gate, and this bishop has been blunted towards the king, and this gate here has been opened up. Now the white side succumbs to the temptations again, written like this: but lusting after amorous fruit, moved so the free will to enter the field of Venus in his fight of a courtesan he tries to disdain, mostly because it was the undertaking of one who's burning in the fire of love. Great beauty, temptress of the wisest, seeing that fire has made a flame of smoke, should I learn all that poison is being poured. So this pawn was captured, and they're saying that poison is being poured because will, or Mars, or the masculine part of this beautiful piece of poetry, is inflamed by passion and maybe also blinded by it. And I think it's very interesting that they say that poison is being poured as this pawn here is captured, because in chess we use the term a poisoned pawn. There's even an opening named after that, the poison pawn, where a pawn can be taken and it looks like it's a good idea, but really it's very, very dangerous. We call that a poison pawn. Maybe that comes from here. Beauty, seeing that will is a flame, taking her courtesy against disdain, and threatening skittish fame, for defense moves with grace, and having its knight leap, offers battle against the lady's field, who attempted to combat shame. This is a fine example that disaster never follows one who can sense the scent. So this move here, with the knight coming here, is about the queen now being able to protect the rook here in the corner, so that it cannot be captured. Now that war has broken between them, the great queen, calling the beautiful name of love, orders the return apace and close of a knight to her defense, and to conquer by gathering her troops the courtly defeat of the enemies that was badly spread on the field, if one does not counterattack at first, if he will oppose at last, will fail. So this is a little bit confusing, because now the lady being referenced is this one, and this lady is being defended, they say, about with this knight. And this is probably something about the language being very old, and defended here probably means coming to her aid, but of course it is the white pieces that are attacking, in particular this knight in conjunction, working together with this queen, is attacking this pawn right here. Modesty is the gold on which beauty is mounted. That's why it sits near her in the castle. So the rook here representing modesty, coming to defend the pawn along with the queen. Seeing how shame moves to assert her value, to honor, courtesy, and beauty, the knight, having weighed his options and no longer restrained, enters the fray. So knight takes on a7. Beauty, when she can do no more, looks with outrage, keeping and defending her peace, and if praise moves or mingles his, beauty remains constant, unmoved, for if everything is for the nobler part, and it would seem that its disdain shoots out of its way, or so the people think, the discreet, seeing something out of proportion, says, he who burns his house must know what he's doing. So with that move, this knight comes here. This is defending the rook here from the knight, and the way they describe it seems like this situation here is very dangerous for white, and they say that they are burning their house and they must know what they are doing, because otherwise maybe the queen will get trapped. As a modern day chess player, it seems quite clear that white is just destroying black. In this situation here, this rook can be captured. We know today from a lot of experience that the rook is much stronger than the knight, so this would be an absolutely favorable trade. And it is also not super hard to see that this attack here is not really that dangerous, because if the knight leaves the guard here, it cannot be, when we capture, it cannot be recaptured. And also we see with pattern recognition that this bishop can come out with a check quite easily of the situation. The knight, breaking his whip, defeats shame, and apparently the rook is now shame and not modesty. So that is how the male side is seeing it, saying, oh, it's not modesty, it's shame, and I will defeat shame because you should not be ashamed. So it defeats shame and comes close to the honorable beauty, so that with joy and a smile would die like the swan on a green field. And a green field, imagine of course that these pieces are green as they would have been at the time. And this knight is of course happy to die because it has helped Mars, the masculine, defeat shame. So saying that the lady should not be ashamed, there is nothing to be ashamed of. And now the knight feels that having done that, it can die like a swan in the green field. Having lost shame, now we are back to the green, having lost shame, which is the acme of honesty, fragrant as a lily, a strong file to break all villainous, moves outrage, burning hotter than a cauterizer, against the flatterer, giving him such martyrdom as to erode with torment his false bitterness, and from such sweet potion he makes a soft salve. Beauty must defend herself and be jealous, for things are prized the more they cost us. This is a little bit confusing. This part of this stanza here is a little bit confusing, but I do like the line, things are prized the more they cost us. I very much agree with that. Will, seeing beauty sail against the wind, gives her the present so as not to stop the game of a new service to reinforce their friendship. The game of love must be played adroitly. One who would force a victory will only find defeat. So apparently the inflamed, passionate Mars is now a gentleman and will not stop the game immediately. And seeing that seeing that Venus is sailing against the wind, gives her a present, this pawn, to reinforce their friendship. So it's a friendship sailing against the wind here. And he's saying, let me help you, let me offer up this present, this pawn, which is of course not defended. In reality, I don't think we could come in with the queen and capture the pawn. It is a poison pawn, because the queen would no longer be defending this knight, so that the knight would capture here. That would be check, and that would be not exactly game over, but very close at that point. The queen, seeing that Will so badly accompanies the service it left, dispatched a great disdain with strange foresight to do outrage to the trap she perceived, mostly as she thought and saw to shew with disdain the other company of the thought or will she had made. When an enemy feigns being abandoned, you must flee, for craft with craft is made. And then she plays this knight up here. So she really sees that this is a trap, that it cannot be captured here, and craft with craft is made. So she is a smart chess player. Now Mars says, one who in hurriedness would hunt will take nothing and surely fall and shame himself. And as he does that, he makes this check, so that the knight does not have time to come in and capture the queen, but rather it will probably have to capture the bishop. And I think it's remarkable that it's written so long ago, but don't hunt for your love in hurriedness, because you will then take nothing and surely fall and shame yourself. So control yourself. Outraged gesture, seeing that thought threatens honesty, forcing the strong to rise, delivers and is ready to die in the fray. So knight takes bishop. And there's all this stuff about somebody being the outraged gesture, that some of the pieces are thought, some of the pieces are honesty, some of the pieces are modesty. And I have read this poem like many times, analyzing it to make this video, and I really get confused about which piece is honesty and which piece is modesty. And they keep referencing the lady, but sometimes it is the player with the green pieces, sometimes it is the green lady, sometimes it's the red lady, sometimes it's you have to keep your wits straight to figure this out. Now, so let's see if the queen will recapture the knight, which is probably the only good move in this position. Will. The queen is will. Will, so the queen here represents will. Seeing that so many times cruel disdain cruelly lies it fallow, in order to put a stop to its charges, disdainfully condemns and banishes it. While honor can celebrate shortly, and confronting it without a need for truce, to one who has so besieged her, one who thirsts for an ending must seek help by word, deed, thunder, lightning, and rain. The royal authority Venus says. The royal authority must never move unless the situation is grave and necessary. Thus honor decides to enclose, disdaining the adversary's thrust. So the knight goes here, because the king must never move unless the situation is grave and necessary, which is a piece of advice that we, with some caveats, will still give today. So the knight blocks the check. He, allowing all advantage, with humble mien invites courtesy to take his life as taxation. It is humility that will lighten, purge, and placate two hearts together, even if quite diverse in nature. So this is a little bit of a pawn sacrifice. That is at least how they present it, because this pawn can be captured by this pawn. However, of course, the queen would be able to recapture immediately. And now she says, courtesy has but a limp purse and will never turn away a gift. So the gift is accepted, and the pawn is captured. And the situation from a modern chess player's perspective looks basically hopeless for what we would call the black side here. They have just lost a bunch of material, and there is a chess technique called trading into a favorable endgame that a proficient club player today would be able to execute from here and force a win with what we would call the white pieces. Those are all very modern chess ideas compared to more than 500 years ago when this was written. So we will excuse them if they saw this battlefield a little differently than we do. In order to adjust all his efforts in one, will put its thought before reason, not caring a bit if something is lost. So the king is reason, and this is thought. So the bishop moves out and being put before reason. This makes sense, that you should have reason behind your thoughts. So that is actually quite clever, I would say. The lady says, as her distinct voice sings, "Be vigilant, honor," as she sees that the guard is kept. And that is bishop coming out to this square here, d6. And unfortunately, in this game, neither side castles. So we do not know if at this time they were playing with the castling rules that we play with today. We do know that in the original poem, the one from the 1100s, castling was not described. So we do not know if castling could have been allowed 500 years ago. About 100 years later, in the 1500s, by the mid to late 1500s, we know that the castling rules they played with are almost exactly the ones that we have today. Seeing beauty shields herself so strongly. So this is beauty, and she's being shielded very strongly. Privation, as it moves the appetite, causes desire to free itself and come out to take the place of will. So remember that the queen here is will, and the queen's place is of course the place of will, and apparently this rook here is privation, symbolizes privation. And beauty with light of grace entered the third level of the delightful aspect of honor, which always involves danger. Beauty must cover itself with virtue. if it will find worship in the world. So I believe that is maybe a bit of an outdated idea. But this is of course also more than 500 years old. Now red, Mars is saying, and I just noticed that it makes a lot of sense, that I hadn't thought about that red is Mars, because Mars is red. Did they know? They couldn't possibly have known that back then though, but it's still kind of cool. Seeing that the queen is not flinching, the good desire of courtesy acts, inflamed with such vivid ardor that the greenest forest might burn without truce. For hope delivers him from toil, a delight to revive one's forces, and making will the heir to the final ugliness. The fire of love calls for green wood. If it is dry, the more it burns, the more it sours. So now the rook comes in and captures here, and talking a lot about the green forest. These pieces should of course be green, and the drier it is, the more it burns, and trying to make will heir to the final ugliness, coming in for the kill, so to speak. Beauty carrying effort as a standard, and standard here is not like a standard of something, it's a battle standard, it's a flag. So beauty carrying effort as a standard, and in order to punish the deceitful services, moved to the front of disdainful disdain. So I think that what they are doing here is that they are saying that the disdain that the beauty here, which is is being chased by will, by the masculine will, or is maybe being courted by the masculine will, that the disdain that she originally had for the flattery, that disdain, that shield of this disdain, that's the pawns here, and that she goes here for in front of disdainful disdain. That is how I read it. She is now on the other side of disdain. She's really come out. Will, this is will, honoring the sweet eyes and delicate gaze, as it looks, moves quickly its thought, surmounts and remembers by the right of those in whom living love sparkles. So this was thought, and thought is now going here. So thought is leaving reason a little bit and is offering up this sacrifice, because it looks like it can be captured by this bishop. So let's see if that is a trap. Thought, always pursuing sweet regard, setting itself to attack the first, was taken and killed. So it cannot bring any more damage, nor turn his will totally blind. For one who tries so hard, besieged by anxiety to the point of bottling up the goods of honor and drowning his spirits right in front, honor will live as will allow. Only this will bring good and bad. So now the thought was captured and cannot bring any more damage. But that unfortunately has opened the path for will, backed up by privation here. Good value finds no discomfort from thought spent in such an article, but with an effort from desire it chooses and fights against disdain the support of honesty, and disdain raising its voice clearer than beryl, it now frets and trebles, seeing pleasure with own seeing pleasure within its own episticle. Perfection takes form from its end, and thus the love of good gains shape. So this knight that was captured here checks the king, and there is only one legal move, because privation, the rook, protects will, the queen. And if you were confused by that word there, seeing pleasure within its own episticle, you should not be too alarmed. The scholar who has translated this into English from the original text could also not figure out what on earth that word means. Honesty, and I think this is honesty. I think the Green King is honesty. Honesty with such words forms its great clamor, shouting, O lofty Venus, since your virtue cannot reform mine, and your help fails me at this juncture, my poor value loses its shine. Seeing that yours does not conform itself with mine, my virtue as it flees leaps out. If such frights are not good for kings, they are still natural and sustain its being. So it's not good for the king to flee, but it is natural and it sustains his being. So the king plays the only legal move, which is king to f8. And now there is mate in 1. So let's see if they find it. Mars, the prince inflaming our hearts, so as to triumph in such high conquest, took honor that claims to be above all things, and offered it quickly to good value, and this, climbing to the degree offered by the beautiful flower with amorous flame, sacrifices the fruit of love with great fanfare. In the moon lies the point of this eclipse, and to understand it is to understand the apocalypse. And that is checkmate. And it's a very nice ending to understand. In the moon lies the point of this eclipse, and to understand it is to understand the apocalypse. And there is also something to be said for the way this checkmate occurs on the board. Now the game is over. The queen checks the king. The king is not able to get out, cannot go here, can still be captured by the queen, and here also be captured by the queen. And what I think is very interesting and quite artistic about this is that it is only the queen, which is willpower, that is delivering this checkmate. Thought is not helping. Thought has actually left the board, and privation is not helping. It doesn't do anything here. It helped get there, but the checkmate is only delivered by will herself. So what do we think about this poem? I think that it is an incredibly ambitious idea. I think that at places it is very, very, very beautiful. I think that it is commendable and quite impressive that, as you can hear, I'm listing all the good things first. I think it's commendable and quite impressive that such emphasis is put upon being honest, and most of the time at least put upon not for the masculine to be a brute, to be controlled by thought, put reason behind his thought, to have honesty in flattery, and prove himself. And, you know, I think that's particularly for something like 500 years old. I think those are virtues that maybe not completely translatable until today, and the sentiments in the modern world, they at least they still hold value, and it's something to think about. On the other side, I think that it is being this ambitious with the poem. It is pretty hard for somebody, at least not the intended audience. Probably the intended audience was more educated to understand this kind of poetry. But we, 500 years later, it's very confusing for us because a lot of the references don't make sense in the same sense that, if we took some of these people here today and we played them some Kendrick Lamar, or we showed them like a Marvel movie, a lot of the jokes they probably wouldn't get, because they reference things that we all know that they have no idea about. And also, I think what they could have done reasonably was to be much more clear about who is who, because it is still not really clear to me if this is really a discussion between the players, or if the players are symbolizing the masculine and the feminine, because it seems to shift a little bit between those. It also shifts a little bit, it seems, what the different things symbolizes. Because sometimes it sounds like they talk about the conquering love, meaning that the Mars is trying to prove himself worthy of her love, is about checkmating the king, but sometimes it seems like it's about chasing the queen, which is beauty. So these things, I think they probably, with very careful analysis, we can figure all of it out. But I would think that when you have a male figure and a female figure on the chessboard and you write a poem like this, that you would be more careful with that. With all of that being said, I think that this is amazing that this exists. I think there were multiple lines in the poem that were really, really great. I have done chess poetry myself. Maybe you have seen the short videos I have made there. I write rhymes with one of my friends to show small technical things about chess. So I absolutely commend the effort that the three authors put into this. And I hope you had a great time listening to this. Please let me know if you would like me to do a video on the poem about the rules of chess. That's the poem from the 1100s. And let me know what you think about, love and chess and the poetry in this video, and also this video in general. Thank you so much for watching. I hope I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.